I'd like to welcome our witnesses. First, we have Tim Walz, Governor of the state of Minnesota. Governor Walz first took office in January of 2019. Next, we have Keith Ellison, Attorney General of the state of Minnesota. Attorney General Ellison also first took office in January 2019. Finally, we have Reverend Mariah Furnace Tolgard, Senior Pastor, Hamlin Church United Methodist. Thank you all so much for joining us today, and we look forward to your testimony. Pursuant to Committee Rule 9G, the witnesses will please stand and raise their right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Let the record show that the witnesses answered the affirmative, and please take a seat. We appreciate you being here today and look forward to your testimony. Let me remind the witnesses that we have read your written statement, and they will appear in full in the hearing record. Please limit your oral statements to 5 minutes. As a reminder, please press the button on the microphone in front of you so that it's on and the members can hear you. When you begin to speak, the light in front of you will turn green. After 4 minutes, the light will turn yellow. When the red light comes on, your 5 minutes have expired, and we would ask that you please wrap up. I now recognize Governor Walz for his opening statement. Governor.
Thank you, Chairman Comer, Ranking Member Garcia, members of the committee. I'm proud to be here today as the governor of the great state of Minnesota. Under my leadership, Minnesota has dedicated its resources to ensuring that all Minnesotans can live dignified and full lives with access to top-notch public schools, quality health care, good jobs. Thanks to these initiatives, Minnesota has been ranked as one of the best states to raise a family in, one of the best states to find a job in, and one of the best states to live in. Although Minnesota's programs have overwhelmingly achieved their intended purposes, they're not immune from fraud. I'll be the first to acknowledge that. But let me be clear. In Minnesota, if you defraud public programs, if you steal taxpayer money, we'll find you, we'll prosecute you, we'll convict you, and we'll throw you in jail. In this anti-fraud mission, we keep good company. Across the country, our nation's governors work hard every single day to combat fraud in their programs. But even as we confront issues similar to our sister states, the people of Minnesota have been singled out and targeted for political retribution at an unparalleled scale, including blocking Medicaid reimbursements to our state just last week. Under the guise of combating fraud, the federal government has flooded Minnesota with masked, untrained, and unaccountable agents who are wreaking havoc in our communities. On the streets of Minnesota, federal agents have entered U.S. citizens' homes who have committed no crimes. They have violated the constitutional rights of our citizens. They have ignored court orders. They have shot first and asked questions later. Time and again, they have gaslit us by demanding that we ignore what we see before our very eyes. But the American people are not so easily fooled. The image of this brutal campaigner seared into our collective memory. The fragile innocence of the 5-year-old boy in a bunny hat being led away from his family. The maddening cruelty of a barely clothed man, a U.S. citizen, being dragged from his house in the dead of winter. The sheer devastation we feel of seeing the lifeless bodies of Renee Good and Alex Preddy. Long after the federal government's agents of chaos pack up and leave, and long after the fraudsters whose name this hearing was supposedly called are prosecuted and imprisoned, the good people of Minnesota will still be picking up the pieces from these senseless acts of cruelty and violence. As we forge ahead, I hope Minnesotans will remain grounded in a sense of justice, a sense of right and wrong. We know that the way to deter crime is to pursue offenders regardless of who they are, not to pardon them because of who they know. We understand that a key to keeping our people safe is to allow prosecutors to uphold the law, not to punish them for refusing to violate it. And we appreciate that public trust comes from building common sense anti-fraud safeguards into our programs, not by tearing down established norms. I've been invited here today to talk about how Minnesota pursues these objectives, and I hope we can have a conversation about how to strengthen program integrity in every state in the nation. A single taxpayer dollar wasted on fraud is a dollar we can't tolerate. That's why, as governor, I have taken decisive action. I appointed a head of program integrity to oversee statewide anti-fraud efforts. I created the position of Inspector General at the Minnesota Department of Education. At the Department of Human Services, I ordered data-driven reviews and, where appropriate, corrective action against providers. I've directed my administration to work with our partners in state, federal, and tribal law enforcement to make sure that fraudsters go to jail. Our cooperation with the FBI and the Department of Justice have led to serious criminal charges for over 75 individuals. Most importantly, year in and year out, and long before Minnesota programs were featured on right-wing social media, I've worked with the Minnesota legislature to give state agencies the authority they need to take action based on red flags when they discover them. There's undoubtedly more to do. We'll continue to do the important work of combating fraud, but as we do so, we're going to remain true to Minnesota principles. We will feed our hungry children. We will help the poor afford health care. We will assist people with disabilities while also keeping fraud in check. We'll demonstrate our decency, our integrity, and never yield to political scapegoating, particularly of our most vulnerable communities. In these extraordinarily trying times, the people of Minnesota have come together to show the world their values. I'm proud and honored to be their governor, and I look forward to today's questions.
Thank you, Governor. We now recognize Attorney General Ellison.
Thank you, Chairman Comer, and thank you, Ranking Member Garcia, and thank you to all the members of the committee. My name is Keith Ellison, and I have the honor of serving as Minnesota's Attorney General. You have invited me here today to speak about the topic I feel very strongly about, fraud enforcement. I look forward to discussing the contributions of my office and the contributions we've made to fighting fraud in our state. Fraud in government programs is reprehensible. It takes food from the tables of the hungry. It takes shelter from those without it. I have worked every day as Attorney General to hold fraudsters accountable, and I'm proud of our record. We've won 300 Medicaid fraud convictions, more than any other state of similar size, and recovered over $80 million for Minnesota taxpayers. We've returned tens of millions of dollars to victims of consumer fraud in Minnesota. Since 2019, our Charities Division has resolved over 50 investigations and dissolved 17 sham nonprofits. It's important to note that under Minnesota law, my office has limited jurisdiction over criminal matters. The only kind of criminal case we can prosecute all on our own is Medicaid fraud. Any other kind of criminal case must be referred to us by county attorneys. Still, we've punched above our weight where we do have criminal jurisdiction. I'm proud of that. Over the past 6 years, my Medicaid fraud control unit has ranked 5th in the nation in fraud convictions. Last week, I urged the state legislators to pass a bipartisan Medical Assistance Protection Act, which would give us additional resources to prosecute Medicaid fraudsters. Where fraud occurs outside of our jurisdiction, my office has and will continue assisting our local and federal partners. When our help is requested, we support our 87 county attorneys in Minnesota, and we regularly coordinate with federal investigators and prosecutors to combat fraud. That type of collaboration between enforcers at all levels of the government is essential in this fight. And that is why, if we are to discuss law enforcement efforts in Minnesota, we cannot ignore the devastating effects of Operation Metro Surge. As you know, the Trump administration, on the pretext of fighting fraud, unleashed over 3,000 masked, armed agents on the streets of Minnesota. And as a result, 2 U.S. citizens were killed by federal agents, Renee Good and Alex Preddy. Federal law enforcement still refuses to cooperate with us in investigating their deaths. Young, innocent children were detained and traumatized. Schools and businesses were forced to close, costing countless families their jobs, their livelihoods, their education, and costing our state hundreds of millions of dollars in economic damage. Operation Metro Surge did nothing to address fraud in our state. It harmed our economy, it scarred our people, and it dealt a devastating blow to fraud enforcement in Minnesota. As a result of Metro Surge, federal prosecutors' efforts to fight fraud in Minnesota have suffered a major setback. In the U.S. Attorney's Office, 6 high-ranking attorneys resigned because of the Department of Justice pressured them to investigate Renee Good's grieving widow. 8 more prosecutors then followed. The remaining staff should be spending their time prosecuting fraudsters and criminals. Instead, they are drowning in immigration-related petitions resulting from Operation Metro Surge. Mr. Chair, members of the committee, we cannot combat fraud without consistent messaging and support from our political leaders. All sides, Republicans and Democrats, the federal government and the states must work together if we are going to win the fight against those who would steal from the public. We need our leaders to unite in that effort, not to use it as a political tool to score political points. I stand ready and willing to work with the members of this committee to advance the cause of holding fraudsters accountable. Now more than ever, we need coordinated, cooperative engagement across law enforcement if we are to achieve our goals. I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, General.